You've said before that property might be the best investment for the average investor to make, to achieve that long-term financial success. And I think you've said property for wealth in the past. Why would you say that's the case for property versus, say, shares or something else?
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the property shares debate, for whatever reason, I've never understood this. It gets so very tribal, especially on social media, it seems. And to some extent, people seem to be influenced by whether they are a homeowner or not, as though that has some kind of a bearing on what's going to happen. I mean, I suppose that my thought process when I wrote that, bearing in mind this is at a period when the cash rate was at 7.25%, and we were coming into a resources downturn, and there was a truly massive undersupply of housing in Sydney. My thought process was, I mean, just look at it statistically. There are more property millionaires than there are in the stock market. Why? Because it's not a numbers thing. Because logically, businesses will return more on equity than a fibro shack or a house. It's an obvious point to make. But people, for whatever reason, psychologically, they trust in long-term trends in land values because there's no daily quoted price, and they will buy a house, they'll pay down the mortgage. They won't worry too much about what the market's doing, and in 20 years, they've built a massive pool of equity. Now, I know that part of that is nonsensical because if there was a daily quoted price on the front of their house, they might look at things a bit differently, but it's just nevertheless true. I mean, if you look at the equity that's been built up in Aussie housing, I think it peaked at 5.5 trillion. It's a huge amount of wealth that people can create in real estate. But it's because they've got this ability, like people can with their super, just to turn it off and just focus on paying down the mortgage. But I don't doubt that dollar for dollar, the stock market over the next 20 years will outperform the property market. There's no question. But whether or not people can actually leverage into it in the same way, that's a different question.
If someone you don't know walks up to you on the street and they say to you,
I usually walk the other way.
You just see them coming across. So they walk up to you and they say, property or shares, or which property should I buy, or whatever. What factors would you say, and we talked about personality traits, what factors would you say lend themselves well to being successful in property?
Yeah, well, actually, the question that I get more commonly is, quite often. So when I'm in London, I'll get an email, I found this place in Chelsea, it's a nice apartment. Do you think it's a good investment? It's completely the wrong question, of course. So the question is, well, why do you want to own a property? Or quite often in London, because there's no restriction on foreign buyers, it's all about, I want a place where I can walk to the theatre. And do you think it's a good investment? You've got to really start with why. Why are you actually doing this? Are you buying somewhere to live? Are you buying for the return on the money you invest? So people generally, they start with the wrong questions, I guess. What makes somebody successful in property? I think it's a long-term outlook, but there's also a certain level of tenacity I think that you need, because there is always summer and winter seasons, and people get flushed out in the winter seasons and spooked out of the market. And I think I suppose the hardest thing for people is not following the crowd. It's exactly the same when you're buying an ETF. If you're buying a global ETF in a certain country, there'll be a period every so often when they get very, very cheap, and that's the time when everyone's getting out. And it's the same in housing. It's a psychological, social proof, I guess. People feel, you see this in Sydney in 2016-17. If there's 50 other people bidding on this terrace, well, they all want it. It must be a good investment. It's like, well, you're thinking about it the wrong way, because 2 years' time there'll be one person bidding on that terrace, and it's not a better or worse investment because of that. It's just a cycle. But I guess that's just an awareness that the fact is that nothing performs well forever or badly forever.
Interesting. Good. When I think about investors in the share market, I think the best investors that I know are pretty humble. They're open-minded. They're lifelong learners. They commit to themselves as much as they commit to anything else. And I wonder if it's a similar set of personality traits that might lend themselves, and I imagine it would too.
100%. Yeah, and in fact, I have to almost catch myself sometimes because with the advent of social media, so I know you've got like a Twitter account, great example. You get, I think of the 100 or so people I follow on Twitter, at least 5 of them have been Australia's best property analyst and best property information, best, and you get involved in these silly debates about, this guy called that and you didn't, and this guy said that, and you just have to remember that all of that stuff is meaningless. You need to take a step back and go, well, that's fine. People can't predict the future, as is shown in every cycle, and you just take a step away from it and say, well, think rationally. What are you doing for you? Don't get drawn into all those silly debates about he said, she said,
who was right.
Yeah, that's it, because it's a rabbit hole and it's a complete waste of your time.
Don't worry so much about who was right, just be right.
But also try and just think logically, and rationally, and try to detach yourself from all of that, because it doesn't serve any purpose. It's just a pissing contest about who's smarter than this guy, and what you find is that most people get some stuff right and some stuff wrong.
Here's a bit of a curveball for you. If I was asked what makes a really good investment on the share market, I might say things like no debt, or good valuation in terms of like low P/E ratio, high returns on equity, etc. There's a million variables you could pull out and pick a handful that are your favourite. If you were thinking of your ideal property, what are some of the things that would have? Would it be apartment, house? Would you be buying it for positive yield, distance to amenities? What would be ideal?
I think if you're taking a long-term outlook, the oldest cliche in real estate is location, because there's a lot of things you can change about a real estate asset. You can change potentially the zoning, you can change the use, you can do any number of things to layout, whatever, but you can't change the location. It's fixed in place. So if you've got a long-term outlook, then the location probably has to come first. And I think, in an ideal world, we'd all own big blocks of land close to the city where people want to live, but one of the things that we've found over the years that because we've been a Sydney and London focused, is you can't always afford the block that you want. That's the reality of it. So especially in the mature capital cities like London, you may well be looking at an apartment style property. So if that's the case, it's more about the land value content. So you typically say an investment grade, if you like, which is it's a bastardization of a term from the stock market, but I suppose an investment grade property in inverted commas would have a land value content of maybe 60% of the asset, even if it's an apartment. So you'd be looking at, if you're buying something that's on a strata or an apartment, then you'd be looking at a block of 4 or something like that. Because if you look at, let's take the most recent example. I've got no dog in this race, but if you look at something like the Sky Tower in Brisbane, it's 300 metres tall. Each individual apartment, the land value, which is ultimately what does the heavy lifting for you on a real estate asset over the long term, the land value might be 3% or something of that nature. So there is no land value, you're just buying airspace. So the scarce commodity in Australian property is obviously well-located land. So I think first and foremost that. How you finance the investment, that's a whole other question. It's very much down to personal circumstances, and of course change of government that might actually potentially trigger quite a lot of changes in terms of how people finance property. But I think in terms of the best assets, it comes down to it's the old cliche about supply and demand, but it's simple geometry really. That the closer you get concentric circles to the heart of employment, there's just less land, and the further out you go, there is land as far as the eye can see. So if you're looking over a 10, 20, 30 year time horizon, the scarce commodity is well located land close to the city.